Creatine. It's one of the most used and well-studied supplements in the world. Yet there are still plenty of people who believe it does nothing, while others think it's as effective as a steroid. If I were to guess, I'd say that most of you who clicked on this video at least know that creatine does something, but not much more than that. By the end of this video, you should have learned everything that creatine does well and doesn't do well, and also how to use it to get the most out of it. Let's start with a brief overview of creatine. Creatine is an amino acid derivative that acts as a major form of energy storage for your muscles, brain, and heart. Most people are unaware of this, but creatine is produced endogenously in the liver, kidneys, and pancreas from the amino acids L-arginine, glycine, and L-methionine. However, because your body is only able to synthesize about 1 gram of creatine every day, the rest has to come from your diet. If you eat enough meat, especially red meat, you likely get a good amount of creatine already. However, aside from meat, creatine is only really found elsewhere in dairy products, except this is only in a very small amount. Additionally, approximately 30% of the creatine in red meat actually degrades into the unusable form of creatinine when cooked at least medium well, likely as a result of the heat and loss of water. In other words, most people don't get a lot of creatine through the foods they eat. Regardless of how much creatine you get through your diet though, supplementation is required to get the amount of creatine necessary to see significant benefits. The most well-known of these benefits is, of course, increased muscle strength and power output. Now, creatine doesn't literally make you stronger, but rather it gives your muscles more energy to work with. To understand how, you need to be familiar with ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, being the primary source of energy for muscles. When ATP is used for energy, it donates one of its phosphates to a cell, resulting in the triphosphate turning into diphosphate, or ADP. In muscle tissue, creatine is mainly stored as phosphocreatine, or creatine with a phosphate group attached. So when the ATP is used and turned into ADP, the phosphate creatine is able to rapidly donate its phosphate group to the ADP molecule, turning it back into ATP that can be used for energy again. All of this occurs mainly in the first 15 seconds of intense exercise, with this rapid energy replenishment allowing your muscles to contract with more force. In addition to improving strength and power output, the increased energy stores provided by creatine also allow you to recover more quickly between sets. While on the other hand, this means that you might not have to rest as long between sets, it also means that you're able to sustain a higher level of performance across multiple sets without fatigue getting in the way as much. Furthermore, creatine doesn't just help you recover in the short term between sets, but also even between the entire workout. The reasons for this still aren't fully known, but research believes it has something to do with creatine having antioxidant properties, allowing it to reduce post-exercise muscle damage markers and inflammation. However, it's thought that this mostly applies to endurance training and that your post-workout recovery after lifting weights might not be too affected. So now that we understand how creatine works, we can look at the best ways to use it. To make this as simple as possible, we're going to use a basic question and answer format for this. Question number 1, should you use creatine supplements at all? Yes, you absolutely should if you wish to get any benefit from it. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's basically impossible to get enough creatine through your diet to get its performance benefits. Therefore, you're gonna have to take a creatine supplement, although most of them are fortunately very cheap, only costing about 30 to 40 cents per serving. All right, question number 2, which creatine supplement should you use? There are literally dozens of different forms of creatine, although the main 2 you'll come across online are monohydrate and hydrochloride. Now, creatine hydrochloride, or HCl, is often marketed as being superior to creatine monohydrate. In reality though, creatine HCl is just more acidic than monohydrate, meaning that it's more water soluble and dissolves better. Apart from that though, the hydrochloric acid molecule just detaches from the creatine in the stomach anyway, ultimately having zero effect on its bioavailability. Now, creatine monohydrate is the the gold standard of creatine and is one of the most studied dietary supplement compounds there is. Not only does it have a bioavailability of 99%, but it's also 88% pure creatine, which is 10% higher than creatine HCl's 78%. Better yet, most creatine monohydrate is in a micronized form, a simple change that allows it to dissolve much better in water anyways. So in other words, just stick to the creatine monohydrate supplements. All right, now question number 3. How much creatine should you take? When you first start taking creatine, you should ideally undergo a loading phase by taking 5 to 10 grams of creatine per day. Now, this loading phase should only last about a week and is just meant to help you see benefits faster. This is because creatine has to saturate your muscles, meaning that it takes multiple doses in multiple days before your muscles are fully loaded with creatine. Now, if you do a loading phase, this typically only takes about a week, from which you can then titrate down to maintenance phase, where you take just 3 to 5 grams per day. All right, if you don't do a loading phase and just go straight into the maintenance phase, it'll take about 3 to 4 weeks on average to reach peak saturation. So just make sure you're taking at least 3 grams per day, as research has shown creatine stores actually go down with doses of just 2 grams per day. All right, now question number 4. When should you take your creatine? Most people will tell you that you should take your creatine immediately before or after your workout, but there isn't even research to support that. For the most part, just take your creatine whenever it's most convenient for you. Now, these next things aren't necessarily questions, but they're important to know if you're trying to maximize the effect of creatine supplementation. First, there's evidence that taking your creatine with carbohydrates can lead to greater amounts of creatine being stored in your muscles and greater muscle glycogen saturation. This is likely due to the heightened insulin release from the carb intake, although this doesn't appear to have a significant benefit in the long run. Now, second, if you run into problems getting your creatine to dissolve in water, there are 3 different solutions. The first is to just buy micronized creatine, a form which most creatine is in already. The second solution is to slightly heat the water you mix your creatine into. And the third solution is to mix your creatine with an acidic acid such as juice instead of water. All right, with that said, if you do mix your creatine into a liquid, try to drink it within a reasonable amount of time. Otherwise, creatine will actually degrade in the liquid into creatinine, a waste product that isn't usable by your body. This is also why you want to stick to powder or capsule forms of creatine if you can. All right, so now let's wrap this video up. With the ability to increase strength and power output by 5 to 15% on average, it's no surprise that creatine is such a popular supplement. Better yet, it's cheap, safe, and extremely well studied. To make things as simple as possible for yourself, just worry about taking a single 5-gram serving of creatine monohydrate every day, and you'll see plenty of benefits from that. The important thing is just to remember to take your creatine regularly, as only taking it here and there won't give you any benefits if it is unable to saturate your muscles. All right, thanks so much for watching my video, and if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, then please subscribe and give the video a thumbs up if you found it helpful in any way at all. As always, get busy, get after it, and God bless.